Hello. People like my wife don't fear betrayal. They don't fear guilt or regret. What they fear, what truly keeps them up at night, is losing control of the narrative. They survive by maintaining an illusion, by carefully curating the way the world perceives them. And once you take that away, they crumble. They become nothing. That's exactly what I planned to do. I wasn't supposed to be home that afternoon. Normally, I'd be in the office, working late like always. But life has a funny way of handing you exactly what you need, right when you need it. A canceled meeting. A headache that convinced me to leave work early. The kind of small, seemingly meaningless decision that changes everything. I walked through the front door, expecting the usual, a quiet house, the faint sound of classical music playing from the kitchen, maybe the smell of dinner if she was in the mood to pretend she was still a loving wife. Instead, I heard voices. Low, intimate, followed by soft laughter. The kind that belonged to a couple, not casual friends. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Suspicion had been gnawing at me for months. The late-night texts she always tilted her phone away to read. The sudden girls' nights that left no trace of perfume or alcohol when she came home. The way she started picking fights over nothing, just to justify sleeping in the guest room. I wasn't stupid. I just hadn't cared enough to confirm it, until now. I didn't slam the door. Didn't call out her name. I just walked in, quiet and deliberate, like a man checking a chessboard before making the final move. They didn't hear me at first. She was too busy giggling. And that sound, it wasn't just laughter. It was mockery. A woman completely at ease, completely certain that the world would always bend to her will, that there would never be consequences. Then I stepped into the living room. She froze. He did too. Some young, tanned, overly confident idiot in a shirt that probably cost less than my cufflinks. He looked like the type of man who thought he was winning some secret game. He wasn't. He was just a piece on the board, and he had already lost. I could have yelled, could have thrown a punch, made a scene, demanded explanations neither of them wanted to give. But what was the point? Anger is a gift to the guilty. It means you're still emotionally invested. And I wasn't. Not in her. Not in this ridiculous charade of a marriage. So I smiled. Just a little. Just enough for her to know that something had shifted. She stammered out my name, voice cracking. I can explain. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. Can you? The idiot beside her tried to straighten up, act tough. Look, man, this isn't. I held up a hand, cutting him off. You don't matter. I said it calmly, factually, because it was true. He was nothing but a symptom of a deeper disease. A temporary thrill that wouldn't outlast the destruction she had just invited into her life. I turned back to her. Don't stop on my account. You look like you were having fun. Her face drained of color. That's when it hit her. I wasn't reacting the way she expected. She had played out this moment in her mind, probably dozens of times, imagining my fury, my devastation. She had counted on it, because a broken man is a man who can be manipulated. But I wasn't broken. I was focused. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just ended. Not today, not in this moment, but soon. Because my wife's greatest treasure wasn't love. It wasn't even money. It was her reputation. She came from a long line of legacy, a conservative, prestigious family that valued appearances above all else. She had spent her entire life crafting an image. The perfect daughter, the devoted wife, the woman who could do no wrong. That image had power. It had influence. And now, I was going to strip it away from her. I took a slow step forward. She flinched. Good. I have one question, I said, voice even. How long? She swallowed hard. It's not. How long? She hesitated. I could see the battle in her eyes. Lie and try to salvage what was left, or tell the truth and accept the consequences. She chose wrong. A few months. I smiled again, just a flicker. 6. She inhaled sharply. Her lips parted, but no words came. Because she knew I was right. I already had all the proof I needed. The hotel receipts, the text logs, the photos I had quietly collected over the last few weeks, biding my time. I had let her dig her own grave, and now all that was left was for me to bury her in it. I looked at her one last time, taking in the panic behind her carefully maintained mask. Then I turned to leave. Wait, she called after me, voice trembling. Where are you going? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't leaving. I was preparing. She had spent months making her decisions. Now, I was about to make mine. And unlike her, I wasn't going to be sloppy. I wasn't going to make mistakes. I was going to take my time. And by the time I was done, she wouldn't just lose me, she would lose everything she ever cared about. Mornings always started the same way. I would wake up first, as I always did, my body naturally adjusting to the routine even before the alarm had a chance to ring. She would still be asleep, curled up on her side, her hair spilling across the pillow in soft waves. I would lie there for a moment, watching her, feeling the familiar warmth of her body beside me. It was a comforting ritual, the kind of quiet, intimate moment that made life feel stable, predictable, safe. I would slip out of bed carefully, making sure not to wake her, and head to the kitchen to start the coffee. She liked it with just a splash of cream and a single sugar, always in the same ceramic mug, the one we bought together on a trip to the coast, laughing at how absurdly overpriced it was. It had a tiny crack near the handle, but she refused to replace it, saying it had character. I used to love that about her, how she found sentiment in the smallest things. By the time she finally wandered in, wrapped in a robe, rubbing the sleep from her eyes, her coffee would be waiting on the counter. She would smile, soft, genuine, the kind of smile that made everything feel effortless. "You're too good to me," she would say, kissing my cheek before taking her first sip. We had our routine, little habits that stitched our life together. Friday movie nights with takeout from the Thai place down the street. Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, where she would always insist on buying fresh flowers for the dining table. Wednesday evening runs, where she would always lag behind at first, only to sprint past me at the last second just to rub in her so-called victory. It was good. We were good. Or at least, that's what I let myself believe. Looking back, I can see the cracks, small, nearly invisible at first, but there if I had been paying attention. The way her phone, once casually left on the coffee table, started staying face down more often. The way she would pause before answering certain questions, just long enough for my subconscious to register it. The way she started coming to bed later, staring at her screen just a little too long before finally slipping under the covers. But at the time, I ignored it. I told myself it was nothing. She was busy with work. Stressed. Tired. People change, don't they? Routines shift. It didn't mean anything. We still laughed. Still made plans. Still sat side by side on the couch at night, her feet tucked under my leg while we watched whatever show she had gotten obsessed with that week. She still told me she loved me. And I still believed her. Because when you've built a life with someone, when you've invested years into them, you don't look for reasons to doubt. You look for reasons to believe. And that's what made it so easy for her to lie to me. Something felt off. Not in an obvious way. There were no glaring red flags, no lipstick on the collar, no secret messages hastily deleted when I walked into the room. It was subtle. A shift in the air, like the faintest scent of smoke before a fire consumes everything. I noticed it one evening after dinner. We had just finished eating, and as I was rinsing the plates, her phone vibrated on the counter. Face down, as always. That wasn't new. What was new was the way she reacted. Before, she wouldn't have cared, wouldn't have even looked up from whatever she was doing. But this time, she stiffened. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to notice. Then, as if realizing her own mistake, she forced herself to relax, reaching for her wine glass with exaggerated nonchalance. "I'll grab that," she said casually, plucking the phone off the counter and walking toward the living room. It was meant to seem natural. It wasn't. I let it go. For now. A week later, it happened again. This time, we were sitting on the couch, a mindless show playing in the background while she scrolled through her phone. Another vibration. Again, face down. Again, that hesitation before she picked it up and tilted the screen just slightly away from me. I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Just curiosity. No accusations. She barely looked up. "Sarah," she said, and set the phone down. Face down. Again. Sarah. The best friend excuse. Reliable. Non-threatening. Impossible to question without looking paranoid. It was the perfect answer, except for the fact that Sarah had texted her an hour earlier while we were eating, and my wife hadn't responded. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. But now, a familiar feeling started creeping into my gut, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Instinct. I let it go. Again. But I started watching. The next change was her routine. My wife was a creature of habit. She went to work at the same time every morning, came home at the same time every evening. She had her gym days, her spa days, her brunches with friends. Predictable, structured, consistent. Until suddenly, she wasn't. One evening, she called, claiming she had to stay late at the office. Big project, she said. Might be a few late nights this week. Maybe that would have been believable if I hadn't heard the soft laughter in the background before she quickly stepped away from wherever she was. She tried to mask it, clearing her throat, adding, "The team's still here, so I might grab dinner with them after." I didn't argue. I told her to take her time. But when she got home hours later, there was no scent of a restaurant on her clothes. No lingering whiff of garlic. No traces of wine on her breath. Just her usual perfume. And something else. Something different. That was the first night she showered before coming to bed. A week later, she started going to the gym more often. At least, that's what she told me. It was always after work, always last minute, always just long enough to make me wonder. "You never used to work out this much," I remarked one evening, watching as she tied her sneakers. She smiled, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek. "Trying something new," she said. "You always say I should take better care of myself." I did. But I also knew that when she actually went to the gym, she came home exhausted, hair messy, skin glowing with sweat. Now, she came home fresh. She was lying to me. I knew it. But I didn't know how deep the lie went. Not yet. So I waited. I watched. And I prepared myself for whatever came next. I stopped ignoring the signs. I stopped making excuses for her. She had underestimated me, assuming I would never look too closely, never question the inconsistencies. That was her mistake. Now I was watching, calculating, waiting. It started with her phone. She used to leave it lying around, unlocked, face up. Now, it was always in her pocket, always face down, and one night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard the soft chime of a notification followed by the unmistakable sound of a passcode being entered. A new one, not the one I had always known. A quiet change, subtle, deliberate. She didn't want me seeing something. That alone was enough to confirm what I already suspected. She was hiding something. I didn't ask her about it. Confrontation gives people the opportunity to perfect their lies, to construct airtight stories. Instead, I started collecting data. If she was going to lie to me, I wanted proof. I began keeping track of her late nights at work. If she said she was staying late, I would check her office's online system. No logged activity after 5. She claimed she was at the gym, yet her smartwatch, which automatically recorded workouts, showed nothing for those days. A simple oversight on her part, one she didn't think I would notice. But I noticed everything now. Then came the location tracking. We had always shared our locations, something we enabled early in our marriage as a safety precaution. But one day, I opened the app and saw the message, "Location sharing disabled." I stared at it for a long moment, not shocked, not angry, just amused. She really thought I wouldn't catch on. That I would blindly accept it, not question the sudden need for privacy. She wanted to play this game? Fine. I would play too. Instead of asking her about it, I started my own tracking. I checked our shared phone bill and pulled the list of outgoing calls. One number appeared too often, always at odd hours. I dialed it from a different phone. The line rang once, then went to voicemail. A generic, automated message. No name, no identity. But I knew. I started testing her lies. "How was dinner with Sarah?" I asked one night after she came home late. Her pause was microscopic, but I caught it. "Good," she said, avoiding eye contact. "We just caught up on things." I nodded, letting her believe I accepted that answer. Then, casually, I sent Sarah a message. "Hope dinner was good. Haven't seen you two hang out in a while." Sarah's response came a minute later. "What dinner?" I stared at my phone, the final confirmation sinking in. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a fact. She was lying. She was sneaking around. And she thought I was still in the dark. I didn't react. I didn't confront her. Instead, I planned. If she was building a house of lies, I was going to burn it down around her, brick by brick, until she had nowhere left to run. There's a difference between suspecting and knowing. Suspicion leaves room for doubt, for rationalization, for the comforting possibility that maybe, just maybe, you're wrong. But knowing? Knowing is absolute. It's a cold, hard thing, sharp-edged and final. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. I had spent weeks piecing things together, tracking her movements, testing her lies. I had watched as the woman I once trusted with everything became a stranger right before my eyes. But even then, a small part of me, a quiet, desperate part, hoped I was wrong. That maybe this was just paranoia, a misunderstanding, a collection of coincidences stacked too closely together. Then, One evening, that hope died. She was in the shower. Her phone, locked with a new passcode, sat charging on the nightstand. But her laptop? Open, unattended, logged into everything. I wasn't looking for a way in. I didn't need one. The universe handed it to me. The messages were there, waiting for me. A conversation thread buried beneath folders of work emails, disguised but not hidden well enough. His name was Darren. I clicked. The first thing I saw was a message from that morning. Can't wait to see you tonight. Missed you. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. If anything, I felt calm, like standing in the eye of a storm, watching destruction unfold around me, but remaining untouched. I kept scrolling. There were more messages. Months worth. Plans made, excuses crafted. Lies upon lies upon lies. Told him I have a work event. I'll sneak out around 9. He has no idea. It's almost too easy. And then, the pictures. Not just texts. Not just words. Photos. Videos. Proof. Undeniable. Inescapable. I exhaled slowly, my mind clicking into place like a machine shifting gears. There was no rage, no shouting, no chaos inside me. Just clarity. I closed the laptop. Listened to the sound of the water running in the bathroom. She was singing softly, oblivious. Oblivious to the fact that her world had just ended. I could have confronted her right then. Could have stormed in, thrown the evidence in her face, demanded answers she would have scrambled to fabricate. But why? She didn't deserve an argument. She didn't deserve the satisfaction of an emotional reaction, of thinking she still had power over me. No, she had played her game well, but she had forgotten one thing. The man she married was smarter than her, more patient, more calculating. And now, it was my turn. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't want an apology. I wanted revenge. And by the time I was done, she wouldn't just regret betraying me. She would regret ever thinking she could win. She thought she had won. That was the funny part. She had played her little game, spun her web of lies, snuck around like she was outsmarting me at every turn. And now, as she sat across from me at the dinner table, casually scrolling through her phone, laughing at some meaningless video, she truly believed she was untouchable, that I was still blind, that I was still hers. But the truth? The truth was that she wasn't the hunter. She was the prey. And I had spent the last 24 hours crafting the perfect trap. The first thing I had to do was identify her weakest point. Every person has one. Some people fear financial ruin. Others fear public humiliation. But my wife? Her greatest treasure wasn't money or even love. It was her reputation. She had spent years meticulously crafting an image. Charming, poised, untouchable. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made people want to be her. She was adored, respected, and she thrived on that. The admiration, the validation, the sense of control. That's what I was going to take from her. Not through some petty confrontation. Not through an impulsive outburst. Through something far worse. I started with the evidence. The texts, the photos, the videos, every filthy little secret she had buried in her phone, now neatly backed up onto multiple secure drives. That was my arsenal. But dropping them into her lap and calling her a liar? Too simple. Too predictable. No, I wanted her downfall to be slow, inescapable, and absolute. Next, I crafted the stage. Her family, her friends, her colleagues. I made a list of every person whose opinion mattered to her. Every person she needed to see her as perfect. And then, I planned the moment of execution. A special event was coming up. A charity gala. One where she would be the center of attention. Where she would stand on a stage, smiling, making speeches about loyalty, commitment, and trust. The irony was too delicious to resist. But I wasn't just going to expose her. That would be too merciful. No, I wanted her to unravel before the final blow landed. So, I started planting doubt. Subtle, strategic moves. A misplaced receipt. A cryptic comment from a mutual friend. A glance that lingered too long. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in, to sense something was off, but not be able to place it. To make her paranoid. Unstable. To let her destroy herself before I even lifted a finger. By the time the night of the gala arrived, she wouldn't just be exposed. She would be isolated, broken, and completely alone. And when that moment came, when her perfect world collapsed around her, I would be standing there, watching, smiling. She still had no idea. That was the best part. She was so wrapped up in her own world, so confident in her ability to deceive, that she never once considered the possibility that I was the one setting the stage. The charity gala was the perfect opportunity. She had been planning for weeks, coordinating with sponsors, ensuring every detail was flawless. This event was more than just another social gathering for her. It was a testament to her status, her influence. The kind of night that reinforced the image she had so carefully cultivated. And it was going to be the night everything came crashing down. I made sure everything was in place. The guests were carefully selected, the media invited, the donors eager to see her in the spotlight. More importantly, I ensured that every key figure in her life would be there: her parents, her closest friends, her colleagues, her boss. Every single person whose respect she craved, whose opinion shaped her existence. And then, of course, there was him. Darren. Her little secret. He would be there too, though neither of them knew it yet. The evening began as expected. She was radiant, the perfect hostess, effortlessly charming as she worked the room. I played my role as well, the supportive husband, standing by her side, smiling in all the right moments, making sure she never once suspected that tonight was different. As the speeches began, I could see the pride in her eyes, the satisfaction of knowing she had once again commanded the attention of the room. And then it was my turn to speak. I stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, and looked out over the audience. Before we continue with the evening, I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special. I began, my voice steady. Someone who has shown incredible dedication, not just to this event, but to the values we all hold dear. I turned to her, meeting her gaze. My wife. There was applause. She smiled, basking in it, completely unaware of what was coming next. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the small remote that controlled the projector behind me. Now, I thought it would be nice to share a little something with you all. A glimpse into the hard work, the late nights, the sacrifices she's made. I clicked the button. The screen flickered to life. The first image appeared. A seemingly innocent text exchange. Then another. The words growing more intimate, more damning. Then the photos. Her with him. The timestamps, the locations. Everything. The room fell into silence. She turned, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I let the moment stretch, let the weight of it settle over her. Then, with a small smile, I gestured toward the screen. It's funny, isn't it? The things people do when they think no one's watching. The whispers started. Her parents, frozen in shock. Her friends, exchanging uneasy glances. Her colleagues, some looking away, others watching with morbid fascination. And then there was Darren, sitting near the back, his face pale, realizing he too had just been exposed. She finally turned to me, panic flooding her expression. This isn't. I tilted my head. Isn't what? What it looks like. I chuckled softly. No, it's exactly what it looks like. She took a step toward me, reaching out, but I stepped back. She didn't get to touch me. Not anymore. I let out a slow breath, then looked out at the stunned crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe my wife has had enough time in the spotlight for one night. I turned back to her, lowering my voice just enough for only her to hear. Enjoy the rest of the evening. It's the last time you'll ever stand in a room like this. And then I walked away, leaving her standing there, drowning in the wreckage of her perfect life. She stood there, frozen, her breath shallow, her fingers trembling at her sides. The room around her was silent, save for the occasional murmur, the shifting of chairs, the uncomfortable coughs of people who suddenly wished they were anywhere but here. Her perfect night had turned into a nightmare in an instant, and the realization was sinking in fast. There was no escape. Her mother was the first to react. A quiet gasp, barely audible, before she covered her mouth with a shaking hand. Her father's expression was carved from stone, unreadable, but his grip on his chair was tight enough to turn his knuckles white. They knew. And worse? They knew in front of everyone. She spun toward me, desperation in her eyes. Please, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Let's go somewhere private. We can talk about this. I watched her, studied her. The way she swayed slightly, as if the weight of the moment was physically pressing down on her. She wasn't used to this. She had always been the one in control, the one who crafted her own reality, twisting truths to fit whatever story suited her best. But this wasn't a lie she could talk her way out of. I smiled small, cold, unbothered. Talk about what? I asked. How you lied. How you snuck around behind my back. How you laughed about it in your little messages. I gestured toward the screen behind me, where the last image still lingered, a picture of her with Darren, locked in an embrace that was unmistakable. Her breathing hitched. She looked around, as if expecting someone to defend her, to stand up and tell her it was all some terrible mistake. But there was no one. Even her closest friends avoided her gaze, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Then she tried the tears. Her eyes welled up, her lips parted in that perfect, practiced way that once might have softened me. I was stupid, she said, her voice shaking. I made a mistake, but it didn't mean anything. It was just, I don't know what I was thinking, but it was never about us. She took a step closer. I love you. I almost laughed. Love. The word felt foreign coming from her now. I tilted my head slightly. You love me. My tone was light, almost amused. That's funny, because from what I read, you told Darren you wished you'd met him first. Her face drained of color. I let the silence stretch, let her feel every set of eyes on her. This was the moment she finally understood. The moment it truly hit her that she had lost. Then, from the back of the room, a chair scraped against the floor. Darren. His face was unreadable, but his clenched jaw and stiff posture told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't expecting this. He thought he was just playing a game, that he'd get to keep the excitement without the consequences. Wait, she blurted out, turning toward him now. You? But Darren was already walking away. She reached for him, but he shrugged her off without a word. Just like that. Gone. And that's when the panic truly set in. Her gaze snapped back to me, frantic now, no longer composed. Please, she begged. We can fix this. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping just for her. Fix this. I repeated, as if considering it. Then I smiled, stepping back. No, you can live with it. Her lips trembled. She reached out again, but I didn't move. I didn't need to. She was already drowning. I let out a slow breath, taking in the scene before me. The wreckage, the realization, the complete and utter collapse of the woman who once thought she had everything. And then, without another word, I walked out. Her world didn't just fall apart that night. It collapsed piece by piece, slowly and painfully, with each passing day. The gala was only the beginning, the public execution of her perfect image. What followed was the aftermath, the slow, relentless unraveling of everything she once held dear. The first blow came from her family. Her parents had built their lives on reputation, on legacy, on the illusion of a perfect, respectable daughter. That illusion was shattered the moment the truth went public. They didn't yell. They didn't fight for her. They simply cut her off. Her father refused to take her calls. Her mother sent a single text, short, sharp, final. You have embarrassed this family enough. Then came the friends. The people who had once adored her, who had hung on her every word, who had envied the life she curated so carefully. Now, they wanted nothing to do with her. Some distanced themselves immediately, deleting her from their contacts as if she had never existed. Others stuck around just long enough to watch the wreckage, to pick apart her downfall, like vultures circling a dying animal. Her career was next. The company she worked for prided itself on values, integrity, trust, leadership. What kind of leader was a woman who couldn't even stay loyal in her own marriage? The whispers at the office became too loud to ignore. Clients pulled away. Colleagues avoided her. And then, one morning, she walked into a meeting that wasn't on her schedule. Her boss, sitting across from HR, a severance package already printed and waiting. She tried to fight it, of course. Pleaded. Tears didn't work. Excuses didn't work. Her name had become a liability, and in business, liabilities are discarded without a second thought. Her final mistake was turning to Darren, the man she had risked everything for, the man she had whispered her secrets to, dreamed of a new life with, the man who, when she showed up at his door, looked right through her as if she were nothing more than a bad memory. What did you expect? He muttered, not even letting her in. That I'd fix this. And then the door shut. With nowhere left to go, no one left to turn to, she reached out one last time. To me. A message. A simple, desperate plea. Can we talk? I read it. Let it sit there, unanswered. Then, without hesitation, I deleted it. She made her choices. Now, she had to live with them. And me? I walked away with everything. My dignity. My reputation. My future. Untouched. Unbroken. Free. I never answered her message. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. Whatever words she was hoping for, closure, forgiveness, maybe even a second chance, she wasn't going to get them. She had spent months lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back. living a double life while expecting me to remain oblivious. And now, for the first time, she was the one left in the dark. The one waiting for a response that would never come. The last time I saw her was by accident. A random encounter at a cafe where she sat alone, staring at her phone, fingers hesitating over the screen. She looked different. Not in the way people do when they age, but in the way they do when they realize they have nothing left. The confidence, the effortless charm, the untouchable presence she once carried, it was gone. Just an empty shell of a woman who had lost everything and had no one to blame but herself. She looked up. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, just long enough for recognition to flicker across her face. And for the briefest moment, I saw something else. Regret. Not the kind you feel when you get caught, but the kind that comes when you finally understand the depth of your own mistakes. The kind that keeps you awake at night, playing memories on repeat, knowing you can never undo what's been done. I gave her nothing. No nod. No smirk. No acknowledgement that she ever mattered. I just turned and walked away. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It isn't just about the lies, or the cheating, or the deception. It's about choice. She had a choice, and she made the wrong one. So now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Bye-bye.